And you're very welcome back, and that was the sound of Cara Dillon, and Black is the colour of my true love's hair. And as promised, joining me in the studio tonight to review our book of the month, The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams, we've got Connie McGranaghan and sister Orla Carlin. You're very welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Jean.
Thanks, Jean.
So it's great to have you, Orla, here, because the last time just circumstances didn't allow it.
That's right.
So it's great to have you.
Thanks a million.
So this is, as I mentioned earlier, the debut novel by Pip Williams. It was a number 8 bestseller in Australia back in 2021, and it's now got the rights for a TV series and a possible film. It's not a book that the title wouldn't entice you to lift it, Connie.
No, it was you that suggested it, so you enticed me to lift it. No, so the book centres around Esme, who is she's actually a fictional character, but the book is based on, it is a work of historical fiction, and it centres around the word bondmaid, or it starts with, in 1901, the word bondmaid was discovered to be missing from the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, and the book centres around then the character Esme, who, by the way, stole the word, or found the word under the table. So she's a fictional character, and as I say, Esme's father in the story works for James Murray, who was the real life editor of the first edition of the Oxford English Dictionary, and I suppose it's based around the compilation of the book. Orla, do you want to say then what happens next?
Yeah, well, as a child, Esme spends much of her childhood under the sorting table where the lexicographers and the editor of the dictionary and her father work, and she's fascinated by the words, and there's a real bond between her and her father to do with all the words, and he sort of teaches her to read as well, you know, sounding out the words, and as Connie said, sometimes she finds these discarded words under the table, and that first word that she found was bondmaid, and when she looked it up, it meant slave girl. And this is sort of a real pivotal point of the story, because as I say, bondmaid meant slave girl, but she would have had a maid herself, Lizzie, who's a wonderful character in the story, and I suppose it left Esme feeling quite conflicted that she was kind of middle class and had this servant girlfriend, Lizzie, who looked after her, and was Lizzie a slave girl to her in ways, even though they had a wonderful friendship and relationship too.
And then Esme later discovers or decides that she's actually a bondmaid herself to the dictionary.
Yeah.
She's a slave to the words, to the dictionary.
Yeah, it meant the word to her.
It's very much the bondmaid thing is very.
It recurs. It reoccurs lots throughout the book.
Mm-hmm. I thought one of the things about the book that I loved was her Pip Williams' development of relationships, and I suppose having a very, very, very tight relationship with my own father, I could see the love that her father and her had,
yes,
and also the love that Lizzie had. There was a lot of love in the book.
There was a lot of acceptance. What I found, and I suppose intriguing, was all this acceptance, because everybody that she encountered through her trials and tribulations accepted her for what had happened. You know, she becomes involved in the suffragette movement. Lizzie's very against the suffragette movement, her by the way maid friend, because she feels that it will never benefit her as a working class person, and she's happy just to keep the roof over her head and doesn't want to get involved with the suffragettes. But when Esme does and gets into trouble as a result of it, Lizzie backs her up all the time. Her father backs her up all the time. Her aunt, Ditta, by the way, backs her up all the time. There's a lot of acceptance and, as you say, love. Great characters, I have to say, great characters.
Yeah. She is motherless, I suppose, as well. We never really mentioned that at the beginning, so I think there are a lot of people who do love and protect her, and I think she's a wonderful, curious little girl that so many people seem to have fallen in love with her. All the other lexicographers in the room, you know, Dr. James Murray himself, you know, had great time for her, giving her birthday presents, making her feel very special. So I think she was a special person and a great, you know, lead character in the book. But as Connie said, there was a lot of love, and as you say, the father-daughter relationship really was beautiful, and him navigating the tricky moments with her growing up to be a teenager, and you know, just guiding her as best as he could and wanting the best for her. You know, you see, even as she gets a bit older, he would have loved her to have settled down and gone the traditional route, but she had other ideas for herself, and you know, he kind of knew better then. He backed off a wee bit then, but yeah,
I thought her development of the characters was really good. You know, you really felt that you knew them, and we've talked about Esme and Lizzie, but then there's that wonderful character in the covered market whenever she sort of left the security of her own home to go out and collect words that maybe the lower class would have used, that didn't merit being in the dictionary and maybe were vulgar. I can think of a few 4-letter words beginning with C and T that will not repeat on radio. But I thought that Mabel in particular was a lovely character. You liked her.
I did,
Orla.
because for me the book did start off a little bit slow, and just to say, I did the audio book, so I was listening to the book, and it was read by a fabulous actor, an English lady. I don't know her from any movies or anything, but her voice was beautiful to listen to, and she put on lots of voices for the different characters. So when she did Mabel at the market, and Mabel was coming out with these quite crude, offensive words, for me, after the slow start of the book, this really had me giggling then out loud. You know, I'd be out walking. Yes, it lifted me, and I was out walking. I found myself giggling, and you know, I'd be in the car listening to it and things like that. That's my best way of accessing books at the minute with the busy lifestyle. I don't get to sit to read sometimes, so the car or wherever, waiting on the kids to finish their activities, it's a great way to access a book. But Mabel, I thought, provided a bit of comic relief, and as you say, some of the words she was saying were quite offensive and crude, but they really interested Esme, because Esme was learning these are words that are spoken by women, but they're not written down, so the men weren't even considering them as an option for the English dictionary. And so she was starting to look at the Oxford English Dictionary then as quite a biased piece of work, you know, because they weren't taking into account the words that women were using, you know.
And I suppose, just got off on a tangent for a minute, when you're doing the audiobook, do you think that added to this book and to other books when you're actually listening to somebody reading it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I probably could count on one hand voices I didn't enjoy. I definitely think they pick very skilled, high quality actors now for audiobooks, and it brings a whole new dimension to the characters. I mean, you know, the way they can change their voices for a particular character.
To a play, nearly.
It is like listening to a play.
Listening to a play.
It's kind of taken me away from podcasts. I would have listened to a lot of podcasts, whereas now I find I definitely think it's a great way of accessing books if you aren't getting time to sit and read.
I do it on the way to work, because on a Monday I work in Donegal Town, so that's my hour. I've got about 120 minutes left in a book.
Yeah.
And
you know you're going to get it
to Donegal Town tomorrow.
And you know you're going to get it finished
tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose one of the things, I suppose, it's about words, but there's a very subtle description of society at the time and how women were treated. You know, the suffragettes, but even you know, the fact that Lizzie is the paid help and what her words don't count.
Yes.
And there was one lovely phrase that she said in the book, if I remember it now, that basically that she does everything, and if it wasn't for that, she wouldn't exist.
Yeah. And that's why she enjoyed embroidery, because it was something that she could show that she had done, because everything I do is either eaten or swept up or put away. There's no trace of anything that I do, which was, as you say, very significant in the book.
And I suppose also education. Dr. Murray's daughter, from what I read, and maybe I misread it, was that she got a degree but she couldn't graduate because she was a woman, and that was another thing that women weren't allowed to do. And I think she said she has no degree, no graduation, because she had no trousers. And I just thought that was, you know, what women, I suppose, before they got the vote. They were in the 19th century, early 20th century. They were very second-class citizens.
And that's definitely touched on in the book with, you know, the character of Tilda becomes Esme's friend. She's the actress, and she becomes like the activist of the book, really, and gets herself in a bit of trouble and has to flee the town of Oxford. But I didn't think it over drilled that too much, because when I read the blurb, I thought, oh gosh, it's going to be very heavy now, suffragette movement, but actually it touched on it very nicely, and Esme chooses not to go down the real hardcore activist radical path, but yet in her own way, by compiling these words, the women's words, the words that were considered maybe offensive and crude, but that gave meaning to their lives. And also she wrote their names beside their definition and their words. So she was given, like, as you said, Lizzie was never going to get any recognition for anything, yet Lizzie's name was in the book at the end, the Dictionary of Lost Words. You know, I think she gave a great definition of knackered. You know, being just more tired than a horse because you just work so hard all day. It's not listless. It's not exhausted. It's way more than that. It's knackered after a day of service in a home.
And there were so many characters in it. There were sort of the main characters that we've mentioned. Who was your favourite, Orla?
Probably Lizzie overall, you know, but there was moments like Mabel had her real funny moments. Gareth, I thought, the person that, you know, becomes Esme's special person, I suppose, was a lovely person, a very down-to-earth young man who her father would have been delighted with. But overall, probably Lizzie. I think she was the most real. And, you know, very humble, and she accepted her lot in life.
And she was clever. Lizzie was clever. You know, she was a lot cleverer than she realised herself.
Yes.
You know, like saying, for example, the embroidery. And like Esme at one point says, Lizzie, do you think God will forgive me? And Lizzie says, well, you have to learn to forgive yourself. You know, and I thought the part where after Esme had been sick and she was struggling or whatever, and they went to the cottage, Lizzie really came into herself. She got a friend.
Yeah, that was,
you know,
lovely.
and she became sort of queen of her small castle. You know, and that was a nice part as well. But I'm like Orla too. I liked Lizzie the best as well. I wasn't mad about Mabel. I found Mabel crude. Do you know what I mean? And I know maybe it's different when you were listening to it, Audible or whatever. Yeah. But I didn't like her at all. You know, when it came to her, I sort of had this vision of a wee grey-haired person, like a witch.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, I know. Yeah, and I think yeah.
And without giving too much away for anyone who's listening who would like to read the book, were you happy with the ending, Connie?
I thought it was a happy ending of sorts, because I suppose the book was recognised in whatever way. I won't say how it was recognised, but it was recognised as it should have been. But I think overall, I think it was quite sad. You know, I needed something. I would have liked a little bit of something uplifting. You know, it was what it was. You know,
what would you have liked best about it, and what did you dislike most about it?
I think I would have liked more emphasis on other characters. I think the character of Esme, you know, I know she was the main character, but I think there could have been more focus, for example, on Lizzie in her life. We knew she was an orphan. We knew her family had all been split up. You know, we knew that she was working for Dr. Murray as a maid or whatever. I think she could have been there could have been a wee bit more. I kind of got fed up reading about Esme.
And what about yourself, Orla?
I did like the ending, because although there's certain things I would have liked to end it up a different way, I accepted what the ending was, and I think in a sense it did come full circle, you know, because someone from her past, you know, was recognising her work and the development of the Dictionary of Lost Words, and in a way I felt it came full circle. Like, I definitely had a tear in my eye when I realised what had happened at the end. And so for me, no, I thought it was a beautiful ending. Like, it was bittersweet. It absolutely was. As Connie said too, I think definitely you would have, I was always wanting more about Lizzie. Like, would she have met up with her friend from the holiday again? Would she have gone back there for another little holiday? You know, something more for Lizzie. Lizzie just seemed to...
All she did was get older, get fatter, get
greyer.
Yeah. It was all a bit dismal. Do you know what I mean? For a person.
Yeah, she devoted her life to Esme.
She did. And do you remember Esme scratching and breaking the mother's hairpin and all that. Do you know what I mean? And Lizzie just accepted it.
And out of 10, what would you score it at, Connie?
Well, I'd probably give it a 7. And I would recommend anybody to read it, definitely.
And what about yourself, Orla?
An 8 from me. It isn't my typical book now, but I have to say I really got caught up in it and really enjoyed it, especially through the audiobook. I think it did bring a lot of life and a new dynamic to it as well.
Yeah, I think I'd give it an 8.5, 9. I loved it. I thought it was a very gentle, tender book, very tenderly written and
charming. A very charming book. Interesting.
So, ladies, thank you so much for taking time out on this, what looks to be quite a nice evening from the weather we've been having, and hopefully we'll get you back again in the near future.
Lovely, Jean. Thanks
you,
a million.
Jean.
Cheers.
Dumpstore's Double Savers makes midweek meals simple and affordable. Step 1. Cook omega-3 fish fingers, €1.49 for a 15 pack.